the head of Parliament, and as such, we submit to you, and we must show the respect. I think they're disrespecting you by pushing you to the edge. Mr. Speaker said, I want to really implore my colleague members of Parliament, wherever they are, that I think you are losing the plot. This nation is bigger than any individual. So is this institution. Mr. Speaker said, let me lastly say that I was a bit worried when I read that my colleague, Comrade Julius Malema, had mentioned that he wanted to mediate in the G40. Let me say this to Honorable Malema, that there is a law in this country. Yes. And we, as much as he pushes for corruption in South Africa, we equally push for corruption. And the best that he can do to mediate is talk to his fellow friends to come and face the laws of this country. They committed a crime, as such, there is no political matter which is stopping them from being here, other than that they committed crimes which are well known, and they must face the cost of this country because we're a law-abiding country. So he's misinformed by thinking that there is any external affairs officer for the G40, then he must come out and be clean. Thank
observations. I don't want to be prophetic about that shamu, but I can assure you it is coming. I cannot say in what form. It will be revealed at the appropriate time. Because enough is enough. Yes. I recognize the honorable member at the back and honorable Honorable Nduna. I'm afraid we should get ready for the budget session. His Excellency the President is by the corner, so business is now suspended until His Excellency the President comes into the House. Thank you. Number 1, the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development. Honorable Minister, there is normally a copy for His Excellency the President and Vice President.
Provided.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that we be granted to present a statement of the estimated revenues and expenditures of the Republic of Zimbabwe for the 2020 financial year to make provisions for matters considered and incidental discussions. As an introduction, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to start by thanking the President, His Excellency P.T. Mnangagwa, the Honorable Vice President, General Mohadi, for their valuable leadership and guidance as we advance the necessary reforms geared towards achieving the Vision 2030. The President's vision and political will and leadership has facilitated the implementation of a number of bold policy measures under a challenging economic environment. This was clear from the State of the Nation address by His Excellency on 1 October 2019. Currently, I wish to appreciate the cooperation and contributions received from my colleagues, honorable ministers and cabinet, and look forward to their continued engagement as we implement this 2020 budget. Mr. Speaker, allow me to also express my indebtedness for the support I have received from this august House through its oversight functions. In particular, I benefited immensely from the contribution to budget finance, Investment Portfolio Committee, Public Accounts Committee, as well as other important portfolio committees. Recent engagement with all the portfolio committees of this august House during the 2020 Parliamentary pre-budget seminar held in Victoria Falls over the period of 31st October and 3rd of November 2019 facilitated very useful in-depth discussions and recommendations. Recommendations from that seminar, together with various other contributions by the citizenry, individuals, civil society, professional and business organizations, have been invaluable in forming the basis for the 2020 budget, which is being supported by the following separate documents. One, the 2020 National Budget Statement, which details on the economy, budget priorities, and summarized allocations. The 2020 Infrastructure Investment Plan, the 2020 National Budget Highlights, which is a simplified and summarized version of the budget. This is also referred to as the People's Budget. And then number 4, the Estimates of Expenditure Blue Book, with detailed expenditure allocations, the Finance Bill, and finally the Appropriation Bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, the theme of the 2020 National Budget is therefore gearing for higher productivity, growth, and job creation. I repeat, gearing for higher productivity, growth, and job creation. Allow me now to contextualize the 2020 budget by briefly highlighting the economic development during 2019 and expectations for the outlook period 2020. Let me start with the state of the economy. Mr. Speaker said, the year 2019 started with good prospects, following the introduction of key macro fiscal reforms and stabilizing and resuscitating the economy in line with the transitional stabilization program objectives. Allow me to share a quote from also a famous religious leader we say that no pain that we suffer, no trial that we experience is wasted. It ministers to our education and development. The reforms which were centered on austerity for prosperity were in no way a retribution, especially in view of the fact that our public finances were not balanced following years of unsustained fiscal deficits. To correct that, the new dispensation put aside the notion of shortcuts, magic solutions, loose funding by strengthening fiscal discipline and tightening monetary policy in order to start rebuilding the economy. This primarily entails switching priorities from unproductive fiscal operations to sound and responsible fiscal spending, which placed the fiscus on the right path. And indeed, during the course of the year, specific milestones were made, particularly in sanitizing public finances, implementing structural reforms, infrastructure rehabilitation, social service delivery, among other achievements. With regards to the fiscus, implementation of fiscal consolidation reforms saw consistent monthly budget surpluses of savings reaching 1.4 billion Zimbabwe dollars between January and August 2019. Similarly, the current account managed to deliver a positive balance of 116.4 million United States dollars during the first half of the year, which all pointed to positive signs for restoring the much needed macro fiscal stability and elimination of the trade deficit. I have on the screens illustration of the budget deficit on the left, and then the current account deficit on the right, two charts. And you can see the difference between 2017 and 2018 for each of them, and then 2019. That shows that the two trade deficits can be narrowed substantially. In contemplating fiscal consolidation, tight monetary policy was restored following the reintroduction of the local currency and ensuring the establishment of a liberalized foreign exchange market, which is, however, in its infancy and requires strengthening. And here I refer to slide 2. There's a sample of the new $5 cash. New $2 cash. Because I don't see a picture of the $2, so I'll show you my copy. This kind of paper is drawn, you squash it, to spring back into life, and we make sure that money is tough and resilient and also exudes strength. On the structural side, milestones were recorded in advancing the ease of doing business reforms, culminating in Zimbabwe's ranking improving by 16 points from 156 to 140 on the ease of doing business rankings. I do hear that this ranking achievement was celebrated in other capitals around the world. We couldn't believe that Zimbabwe had achieved this level of ranking in environment for business. Furthermore, notwithstanding the difficult macroeconomic environment characterized by escalating costs associated with the exchange rate shocks, progress was also made in the area of infrastructure development. Through ring-fencing resources, various infrastructure projects in the sector of health, education, water and roads, as well as rural electrification were either completed or at an advanced execution stages to allow delivery in the short term. In addition, complementary loan financing enabled implementation of a number of key infrastructure projects, such as 1K7 and 8, expansion project, new parliament building, and the RG International Airport. Implementation of this project is on course. To mitigate the hardships arising from external shocks, the drought, South cycle of Sudan, domestic resources were mobilized for various humanitarian needs and social protection requirements, which were also supported by development partners. I would like to sincerely thank our development partners for their continued humanitarian support. Let me highlight some challenges, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, the 2019 budget faced a very difficult economic environment, which was aggravated by a severe 2018-2019 drought, which caused food insecurity and depressed electricity generation with negative spillovers into the rest of the sectors of the economy. This is visible from the slide up there, these challenges in terms of how they went, impacting directly on agriculture, indirectly through electricity, output, and also impacting other sectors as well, because every sector is linked to other sectors. A humanitarian crisis also descended on the country due to the Cyclone Idai, which caused significant loss of lives and left about 270,000 people in urgent need of humanitarian assistance, besides causing widespread property and infrastructure destruction. Furthermore, a complex macroeconomic environment marked with acute foreign currency shortages amid limited international financial support, marked distortions, and rising inflation further imposed immense pressure on the economy. These challenges reverse some of these stabilization gains we have made and put us off track on some of our GSP and the staff monitoring program challenges. Consequently, the economy was left in a weak position during the better part of the year, with growth now projected at minus 6.5% in 2019. Slide. I don't need to read that, but it will show that the end of the year projection in terms of growth is minus 6.5%, and look at some of the sectoral growth figures, so you can see where the pressure is coming from. The industry, and mining, naturally, being impacted by power outages. Inflationary pressures also arose from depreciating exchange rate of the local currency against the US dollar. This was further fueled by adverse market expectations during the second half of the year. True, you can see the correlation between inflation and exchange rate, Mr. Speaker said, and they really move together. So you can see where the pressure is coming from. Pricing, it is coming from the parallel market. However, economic recovery of up to 3% is projected in 2020, primarily premised on the following key assumptions. We expect a better rainfall season supported by increased support towards rehabilitation, development of irrigation infrastructure to sustain agricultural activity. We also expect better planning for increased agricultural production. That's also critical. Number two, we expect improved macroeconomic stability through continued fiscal and monetary discipline, as well as a substantial improvement in the balance of payments position. This will also improve due to improved electricity supply through imports and other alternative sources of energy. These include harnessing of emergency power generation capacity from independent power producers and projects. The extension of supporting tax and non-tax incentives to stimulate domestic production to get another effect. Advancing implementation of the ongoing ease of doing business reforms will also improve investment climate and be a positive factor as well. And finally, increased investment by both government and the private sector is yet another factor that will impact positively on the prospects of the economy. Similarly, monthly inflation is expected to fall to single digit from the first quarter of 2020 to close the year at 2% on the back of commitment by Arab Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe to implement tight reserve money supply targeting framework as announced in the second 2019 monetary policy statement. Let me turn to the 2020 budget objectives and thrust, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker said the 2020 national budget marks the exit from austerity, growth stimulation, employment generation, through promotion of production-oriented investment and productivity without losing focus on fiscal responsibility. Slide 7 up there shows the progression that we are on to. Having gone through austerity for prosperity, it is time to exit and progress toward promoting microeconomy, productivity growth, and above all, job creation. So, the 5 pillars of the budget, Mr. Speaker said, in the 2020 national budget is productivity and growth, job creation, promoting competitiveness, promotion of more sustainable and inclusive development, and finally, export diversification and import substitution. The growth and productivity thrust will be supported by the re-engagement process with the international community, which will enable us to meet our budget objectives. Let me turn to the 2020 budget macro-fiscal framework. Informed by the above economic development,
the bonuses are based on a formula that is inclusive of transport and housing allowances, which is a one-off variation to current policy which base these payments, a pension fund. Mr. Speaker, sir, the 2019 budget availed 70.4 million as seed money for the establishment of the Public Service Pension Fund to facilitate movement from the pay-as-you-go to a defined contribution plan. A further 289.5 million is proposed in the 2020 budget towards the initiative. Once set up, government will identify assets that will be tied to the scheme as a way of further enhancing its balance sheet. Let me turn to subsidies and other market distortions. Market distortions associated with subsidies present an additional risk to macroeconomic and fiscal stability. In particular, subsidies on fuel, electricity, and agriculture have in the past led to large and often unpredictable expenses. Where subsidies are deemed essential and can be financed, there will be need to be clearly targeted, reflected in the budget with adequate budgetary provisions. To ensure effective implementation of the proposed subsidy policy, additional measures will be taken to tighten eligibility to subsidize goods and services so that only those who are eligible can benefit. Let me turn to fuel and electricity pricing. Government has already instituted new pricing frameworks for fuel and electricity that adequately reflect costs, including those resulting from changes in import prices and exchange rate fluctuations. The pricing framework for fuel also ensures that the pump prices remain comparable with those charged in neighboring countries, so as to remove arbitrage opportunities arising from illicit fuel exports. Let me turn to the new grain subsidy model. The current subsidy policy whereby government funds the procurement of grain at a market price and sell this to registered grain millers at subsidized prices has been open to abuse and placed a huge burden on the fiscus. At times, the intended beneficiaries do not enjoy the benefits of the subsidy from government. Thus, cost-reflective tariff structure also serve the purpose of reshaping demand patterns in the effective and efficient use of scarce resources in the economy. To address these distortions, Mr. Speaker, government will, with effect from January 2020, remove the existing grain marketing subsidies for maize and wheat that were being provided to grain millers through the Grain Marketing Board, GMB. The intervention will see GMB selling wheat and maize at market prices, with grain millers having an option to either import or purchase grain from GMB. This means the prices of basic commodities such as bread and meal may adjust. In order to protect vulnerable groups of our society, government will extend targeted subsidies on the production of roller meal, of cooking oil, and the standard loaf of bread. A reimbursement system will be implemented in order to extend the subsidy to the producers of roller meal, cooking oil, and standard bread through tax set-off arrangements, where possible, and voucher schemes for the vulnerable. Let me turn to public transport system, Mr. Speaker. To cushion the commuting public against the rising cost of transport, government will continue to subsidize bus transport system as well as capacity at ZUPCO to provide an efficient public transport system. In this regard, ZUPCO will be facilitated to purchase more reliable conventional buses. Let me turn to the issue of the single exchange rate, Mr. Speaker. In order to further remove unbudgeted subsidies as well as to avoid their resurgence, government will apply a single exchange rate regime throughout all sectors of the economy to avoid implicit subsidies arising from preferential allocation of foreign exchange at below market exchange rates, as it was previously the case for fuel imports and other prioritized goods. Let me turn to the financing modalities for agriculture. In line with our Smart Agricultural Trust, which seeks to promote productivity and sustainable financing, government reiterates the policy position of financing commercial agriculture, including command agriculture, from being government-led to bank-led, with government providing guarantees to banks and from time to time providing liquidity as well. In the same vein, resolution of the bankability of the 99-year leases will gradually remove the necessity of government guarantees and boost productivity in agriculture. Going forward, direct financing support by government will be targeted at vulnerable households under the social protection programs. Let me turn to some supply-side interventions. Over the long period of time, the economy has endured underinvestment virtually in almost all sectors, Mr. Speaker. The bigger portion of the national budget resources were primarily directed to current budget expenditures. That way, undermining all infrastructure and other developmental programs, which ironically supports both stabilization and growth objectives. The 2020 budget therefore prioritized enhancing productivity for growth that creates better jobs and ensuring equity and inclusivity. Let me now turn to some strategies for enhancing productivity for growth, Mr. Speaker. The stabilization reforms, which started in the last quarter of 2018, lay a firm foundation for enhancing productivity for sustainable, inclusive economic growth. The thrust for 2020 is centered on ramping up productivity in agriculture manufacturing, mining, services sectors to create jobs and reduce imports. For agriculture, embracing climate-smart agriculture will improve prospects for agricultural sector, which is projected to grow by at least 5% in 2020. This growth is attributable also to a better rainfall season during the 2019-2020 season, supported by timely disbursements of inputs. In line with this thrust, emphasis will be on better planning, shared financing burden between government and the private players, productivity, which also relies on irrigation and marketing systems which guarantee farmer viability. On better planning, the 2020 budget makes a turning shift from ad hoc planning to more forward planning, particularly in terms of availability of inputs on the market. The budget will therefore, starting in January 2020, establish an appropriate financing plan which ensures early build-up and ring-fencing both local currency and resources and foreign currency resources in support of domestic inputs producers and importation of inputs. This resolves the challenge of agriculture demands competing with other programs for both domestic and foreign resources during the last quarter of the year, which apparently coincides with the start of the summer cropping season. Accordingly, for the capacitation of the Ministry of Lands, Agriculture, Water, Climate and Rural Resettlement, I'm allocating 1.9 billion Zimbabwe dollars for its prioritized programs, which is in irrigation, veterinary services, farmer compensation, agriculture, education, extension services, crop and livestock research and technology, land survey and mapping, and the total, without reading the figures out, is 1.9 billion. Let me turn to dealing with climatic shocks. Over the years, Zimbabwe has been experiencing severe droughts at a rate of 1 in 10 years and mild droughts of 1 in 3 years. Given that the economy is highly dependent on rain-fed agriculture, there is an urgent need to drought-proofing the sector. There's a chart out there showing the various episodes of drought which coincide with negative output in the form of negative GDP growth. And this year is no different. That's why we've got this drought period coinciding with the GDP growth of minus 6.5%. There are greater chances that the 2019 season will be maybe not so good, but it's still promising. Such developments will, if they materialize, may escalate government expenditures on grain importation, infrastructure rehabilitation, and disease control. Government is therefore creating a fiscal buffer to the tune of 165 million Zimbabwe dollars to cater for drought shocks, as well as targeting early warning systems. Other drought-proofing measures such as investment in irrigation infrastructure, dam construction, and desalination, as well as research and extension services, adoption of drought-resistant varieties, which is traditional grains, will be put in place during the 2020 agriculture season. On extension services, the 2020 budget allocates 281.5 billion Zimbabwe dollars towards agricultural extension and advisory services to facilitate dissemination of agricultural information, new technologies, and improved agricultural practices. On irrigation and food security, under the 2020 budget, irrigation development is receiving top priority in order to guarantee food security in the country. Government will therefore target irrigable hectarage to guarantee grain production of around 1.8 million tons. For this purpose, capable farmers with irrigation facilities will be identified with a view of contracting and supporting them to produce required grain specifically for food security. Similarly, the 200 hectare per district irrigation program will be supported, taking advantage of the smart agricultural orientation, which will also promote solar irrigation systems. For the total irrigation program, the budget provides 422 million Zimbabwe dollars. Let me now turn to the compensation of former commercial farmers. The government is concluding the evaluation exercise to facilitate the compensation of former commercial farmers. To date, approximately 768 former farm owners consented to the interim payment scheme, with over 500 farmers having been paid already. In 2019, a total of 68 million was availed towards farm owners, and the 2020 budget is also targeted to set aside 380 million for interim compensation in line with the Constitution and the BIPAs, and we're also targeting the vulnerable and the elderly farmers. In addition, consultations with the international financial institutions and other stakeholders on sustainable options for mobilizing the requisite compensation resources are being expeditiously explored. I need to drink something. Almost there. Okay. Yeah. It's a bit slippery. Oops. By year 2023 will be advanced through the 2020 budget. The sector is projected to rebound to 4.7% growth on account of the expected improvements in the availability of power, of electricity. With regards to gold mining, government is aware of the challenges related to ring-fencing arrangements, retentions, gold deliveries to fidelity printers, among others, and these are receiving serious attention. Going forward, investment agreements in platinum, gold, chrome, among others, which have been concluded, are expected to boost output in the sector. Furthermore, in 2020, the fiscal regime for the mining sector will be fine-tuned and improved, while the Ministry of Mines and Mineral Development will be resourced to enhance exploration, which is critical for expansion in the sector. Mr. Speaker says Zimbabwe is underexplored as a mineral-rich country, and we intend to deal with this. This will allow the ministry to acquire the relevant equipment such as computers, among others, and vehicles. The Minerals Marketing Corporation of Zimbabwe will be supported through a credit guarantee scheme to provide funding and support the non-gold sector. Accordingly, I'm allocating 293.2 million to the Ministry of Mines and the Mining Development for its capacitation in terms of planning, promotion of exploration, data capturing, automation, among others. Let me turn to curbing of mineral leakages. Mineral exports remain the major sources of foreign currency, especially gold. However, leakages have been on the rise, depriving the country of foreign currency earnings. Government is therefore reviewing and tightening the Gold Trade Act and capacitating the Gold Mobilization Unit. Strengthen industrial value chains, job creation, and export-led industrialization. A few charts on the screens to animate the presentation a little bit. The 2020 budget is therefore advancing industrialization thrust through actualizing value chains and implementing the local content strategy, initially targeting support to the following subsectors: pharmaceuticals. IDC will focus on promotion of research and development to increase productivity, diversification, and broadening product range and creating opportunities for job creation. Treasury will also provide a guarantee scheme for companies to access capital from financial institutions. Really new.